They say you're free. But are you? Be honest. If someone took your phone away for 24 hours, would you feel peace or panic? We live in a world where control doesn't wear a uniform or carry a weapon. It wears a smile. It gives you likes, snacks, streams, and endless distractions. And the more pleasure you consume, the more invisible your chains become. That's the trick. That's how modern slavery works now. Not through fear, but through comfort. And you didn't even notice it happening. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's not that bad. Everyone does it. But let me ask you something real. If your life feels empty without noise, who exactly are you when things go quiet? If you can't sit with your own thoughts, who's really in control? What if this version of freedom you've been sold is actually a brilliantly designed trap? And what if the way out isn't found in more pleasure, but in something deeper, something lasting, something like purpose? In this video, we're going to talk about the uncomfortable truth no one wants to hear. That your constant craving for pleasure might be the very reason you feel stuck. That your emotional fragility might be engineered, not natural. And that there's a way to escape. Not by adding more, but by choosing less. Less noise, less comfort, less addiction to instant gratification, and more resilience, more clarity, more meaning. So if you've ever felt like your mind's not entirely yours, if you've noticed how the world keeps you busy but not fulfilled, if something inside you whispers that this can't be all there is, stay with me. Because the answers you're looking for aren't hidden behind another click. They're hidden behind your willingness to look beyond the pleasure and into the truth. They say we're free. Free to choose, free to think, free to live as we please. But if you pause for just a moment, you might notice something strange. The first thing you reach for in the morning isn't freedom. It's your phone. A quick hit of dopamine, a scroll, a reel, a flash of color. Before you've even brushed your teeth, your brain's already flooded with stimuli you didn't ask for. You didn't choose that video, that ad, that story. They were chosen for you. This isn't an accident. It's a system, and it's elegant in its simplicity. It doesn't scream, it whispers, it doesn't cage you, it entertains you. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Aldous Huxley warned us decades ago in Brave New World, the most powerful form of control isn't pain, it's pleasure. And we laughed. We said, that'll never be us. Yet here we are, living in a world that doesn't need to silence us with fear. It simply keeps us too busy, too entertained, too satisfied to notice. This isn't modern slavery with chains or guards. It's comfort that pacifies. Distraction that sedates. Social media, fast food, TikTok, porn, Amazon one-click buys. Every single one designed to keep us numb, passive, docile. Because a distracted mind is a controllable mind. Not by force, but by choice. Or at least the illusion of it. Let me ask you something real. When was the last time you sat with boredom? Just you. No screens, no music, no sugar hit. Just silence. For most people, it's unbearable. But why? Because silence reveals the void, the anxiety, the emptiness we've been conditioned to avoid at all costs. We've been trained, without even realizing it, to run from that discomfort and into the arms of the nearest digital distraction. It's not just a bad habit, it's a form of programming, one that shapes our desires, our behaviors, even our values. And slowly, silently, it rewires the way we experience life itself. In the past, people fought for their freedom with blood and sweat. Today, we give it away for a dopamine hit. Not because we're weak, but because the system made it easy. It sold us convenience as liberation, endless entertainment as empowerment, the freedom to binge, scroll, swipe. But what it really did was take away our tolerance for effort, stillness, and presence. That's not liberation. That's engineered dependency. And the worst part? It doesn't feel like oppression. It feels like pleasure. That's what makes it so insidious. It's a velvet prison, padded with likes, views, and sugar-coated lies. You can see it everywhere. In grocery store lines, on park benches, in classrooms, even in church pews. Heads down, screens up. No eye contact, no thought, just scrolling, searching. For what exactly? Validation? Novelty? An escape from your own mind? The truth is, we've become so used to dopamine on demand that reality, raw, unscripted, sometimes painful, feels unbearable. That's the trap. You chase relief, not reflection, and the system keeps feeding you just enough pleasure to keep the emptiness at bay, but never enough meaning to make you whole. And this affects more than just your attention span. It shapes your sense of self. Because when you're constantly consuming, you stop creating. When you're constantly reacting, you stop reflecting. And when your every idle moment is filled with noise, your inner voice, the one that questions, dreams, rebels, gets drowned out. This is how modern society controls you, not by censoring your voice, but by making you forget you had one. Not by restricting your choices, but by overwhelming you with distractions. And before you realize it, you're not living. You're just responding to a feed. But here's the part they don't want you to know. Your attention is power. And every second you spend chasing the next hit of pleasure is a second you're not building something real, something lasting. They don't need to stop you from thinking. They just need to keep you entertained. They don't need to imprison you physically. They just need to make comfort your god. And once that happens, they own you. Because you'll trade your time, your energy, your soul, for one more scroll, one more click, one more high. That's how subtle modern slavery really is. And most people won't even notice until it's too late. So now I ask you not to panic, but to pause, to sit with this idea. What if the thing you crave the most is the very thing keeping you from freedom? What if pleasure is the new chain, and your habits are the lock? No alarms, no threats, just a perfectly engineered routine. And now that you've seen the mechanism, you can start asking the questions that actually matter. Because once you notice the trap, the next question is, what is it doing to your strength? There's a dangerous lie floating around modern culture, that life should feel good all the time. That discomfort is a glitch. That pain is a sign of failure. And so, we run from it, hide from it, scroll past it. But here's what nobody tells you. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is the teacher. And when you remove it from life, you don't become stronger. You become softer. Not soft in the kind way, soft in the fragile way. Like a glass cup placed in a world full of storms. It might look polished from the outside, but it shatters at the first sign of tension. Modern society conditions you to fear discomfort, the way older generations feared war or famine. But here's the irony. Our ancestors faced real danger and became resilient. We avoid every inconvenience and become dependent. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. If the air conditioner breaks, we melt. If Wi-Fi drops, we panic. If someone disagrees with us, we collapse. We've created a world padded with ease, but inside it, we're breaking. And it's not because we're bad people. It's because no one ever taught us how to sit with the sting without reaching for the escape hatch. It starts early. School teaches you to memorize, not to question. Work teaches you to produce, not to feel. Entertainment teaches you to laugh, cry, cheer, but never to stop and wonder why you feel empty after it ends. We're not building humans. We're manufacturing consumers. And consumers must be fragile, because a strong person doesn't buy out of boredom or fear. A strong person doesn't need another fix to fill the silence, but a fragile person does. A fragile person scrolls, binges, buys, posts, because they've been taught that stillness is death. That quiet means you're failing at life. I've seen it with my own eyes. A young man fired from his job breaks down like he's been exiled from life. A teenager ignored on social media spirals into depression. A couple argues, and they both retreat to their phones rather than resolve it. This isn't weakness by nature. It's weakness by design. Because when a system removes all discomfort, it also removes your training ground. You can't grow muscles without resistance. You can't grow a spine without pressure. You can't build a soul without weathering some storms. And when you dodge every storm, you stay small, even if you look successful from the outside. Let me give you something practical. Next time you feel bored, don't run. Watch it. Boredom is the gateway drug to self-discovery. Sit with it. Ask, what am I avoiding? And when sadness knocks, let it in. Don't drown it with music or memes. Journal it. Walk with it. Let it talk. Because emotions aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to be felt. And here's the real kicker. When you allow discomfort to breathe, it stops suffocating you. You become stronger. Not in a macho, hardened way, but in the quiet, unshakable kind of way. The kind that bends without breaking. This emotional resilience is your birthright, but it's been buried under dopamine addiction and instant gratification. You've been trained to numb instead of feel, consume instead of reflect, avoid instead of confront. And that's no accident. A fragile population is an obedient one. A generation that can't handle discomfort will never rebel, never question, never demand better, because they're too busy self-soothing. And so the cycle continues. Pain arises, reaction follows, system profits. You think you're in control, but your reactions are predictable. And in that predictability, you become manageable. Now imagine what happens when a fragile person finally faces real hardship. Not a cracked screen or a lost follower, but a death, a breakup, a layoff, a betrayal. They collapse because they never trained. They never built the inner infrastructure to withstand emotional earthquakes. And here's the tragedy. Their suffering is real, but their tools are plastic. They reach for coping mechanisms instead of clarity, for noise instead of meaning, for dopamine instead of depth. And the system smiles. Because once again, your discomfort leads you not to growth, but to consumption. Not to strength, but sedation. But what if that could change? What if, instead of escaping the pain, you leaned into it? Not recklessly, but intentionally. What if discomfort was no longer something to be avoided, but something to work with? Because the truth is, every person you've ever admired was forged in discomfort. Every story worth telling is rooted in pain that became purpose. And while most people will keep running from it, you don't have to. Because the moment you start facing discomfort with open eyes, you begin remembering that freedom was never supposed to be easy, but it was always supposed to be earned. And the path to earning it? It begins with something even more powerful than resilience. It begins with meaning. There's a moment in every person's life when pleasure stops being enough. You binge another series, buy something new, eat your favorite meal, and feel nothing. Just a quiet, nagging emptiness that no distraction can fill. That's not failure. That's awakening. It's your inner voice saying, this isn't working anymore. You've tried the dopamine loop, the quick fixes, the instant gratification, but now something deeper is stirring. A craving, not for noise, but for meaning. Not for more pleasure, but for purpose. And here's the good news. That craving is not a problem. It's the start of your liberation. Let's get something straight. There's nothing wrong with enjoying life. Pleasure has its place. But when it becomes your compass, you lose direction. The system wants you chasing the next hit, never asking why. Because if you stop long enough to ask, you might realize you were never choosing your path. You were reacting. But purpose flips the script. Purpose doesn't ask, what feels good right now? It asks, what matters most, even when it doesn't feel good? That question changes everything. It's not easy, but it's real. And real is what your soul's been begging for all along. So how do you start? The first step is strategic deprivation. Not to punish yourself, but to regain control. Temporarily cut what numbs you: social media, junk food, mindless scrolling. Give your nervous system room to breathe. You don't have to go full monk. Just enough silence to hear your own thoughts again. Enough stillness to remember what used to light you up before the feed stole your focus. Think of it like resetting your palate. Only then can you taste real meaning again. And no, it won't feel magical at first. It'll feel boring, awkward, like your brain throwing a tantrum. That's detox. That's recovery. Let it come. The second step is rebuilding your tolerance for discomfort. Sit with boredom. Watch what it reveals. Allow sadness without anesthetizing it. Get curious about anger. These emotions are not enemies. They are signals, warnings, clues. They point to what you've been avoiding. And once you learn to feel them without fleeing, you begin to reclaim your power. You become someone who can hold space for pain without falling apart. That's rare today. That's strength. You don't need to chase pleasure when you can face pain with presence. And in that space, something sacred starts to grow. Resilience that doesn't shatter when life gets loud. Next is the core habit. Cultivate critical thinking. Not just intellectually, but emotionally. Ask yourself, who profits from my addiction to distraction? What am I avoiding when I scroll? These are not rhetorical questions. Write them down. Answer them. Say them out loud. Because until you name the system, you're still part of it. The more you question your patterns, the more you notice how deeply programmed they are. And the more you notice, the more freedom you regain. Awareness is not a magic fix, but it's the doorway. You can't escape a trap you don't see. But once you do, the script is yours to rewrite. And now the heart of it all. Replace pleasure with purpose. Ask, what do I want to build that lasts longer than a dopamine hit? Maybe it's a business, a community, a craft, a relationship, a body of work. Whatever it is, let it hurt a little. Let it stretch you. Because purpose demands effort, but it gives depth in return. It doesn't sedate. It awakens. It doesn't numb. It strengthens. Every time you show up for something that matters more than comfort, you lay another brick in the foundation of a life that can't be bought, scrolled, or swiped away. Let me get practical. Start small. Pick one thing each morning that connects you to meaning, not stimulation. Maybe it's journaling, reading one chapter of a book like Man's Search for Meaning, calling someone who matters, or spending 10 minutes in complete silence. These are not glamorous habits, but they're revolutionary in a world built on noise. Over time, these moments become anchors, and when the chaos of the world comes rushing in, and it will, you won't drift so easily, because now you've built roots, not on algorithms, but on values, not on applause, but on intention. But here's something you need to prepare for. When you begin this shift, the world won't applaud. Some people will feel threatened by your clarity. Your silence will make their noise louder. Your peace will make their chaos feel exposed. They might mock you, misunderstand you, even push you to fall back in line. That's okay. Because when you walk with purpose, you don't need permission. You need persistence. And eventually, those who once doubted you will ask you how you did it. And the answer will be simple. You stopped chasing pleasure and started building meaning. Now imagine this, a life where your mind is yours again, where your days are not dictated by distractions but defined by direction, where you're not enslaved by dopamine addiction but guided by clarity. That kind of life, it's not sold in apps or subscriptions. It's built day by day with courage, discipline, and presence. And if you've made it this far, you're not just thinking about it anymore. You're ready to live it. Because from here on out, the question isn't whether freedom is possible. The question is, are you ready to become someone the system can no longer control? So now you know. The trap wasn't built with walls or barbed wire. It was built with convenience, with endless options, with comfort disguised as choice. And maybe, for the first time, you're starting to see it. You're starting to realize that what you thought was freedom might actually be a form of modern slavery. But knowing is just the beginning. What matters now is what you do with this awareness. Let me ask you something important. What's one thing you've been using to avoid discomfort lately? Is it social media, food, work? Whatever it is, can you sit with it just for a moment and ask yourself what it's really costing you? Your time, your attention, your identity? Because behind that avoidance, there's usually a door. And behind that door, purpose. But only if you're willing to knock. This isn't about rejecting pleasure forever. It's about reclaiming your right to choose when and how it enters your life. It's about building a mind that's strong enough to feel, to think, to resist, and to create. Because a resilient mind isn't addicted to the next hit. It's committed to the long game. And that kind of mind, it's dangerous to every system that wants you small, silent, and sedated. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt like your habits were no longer yours? Have you noticed how hard it is to sit in silence, to feel something deeply, to think for yourself? Drop a comment below. Don't be afraid to tell the truth. This is a space for people who want more than surface-level living. And if this message hit home, if it stirred something inside you, don't let it fade. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. Not because you owe me anything, but because you owe it to yourself to stay awake. This is only the beginning of a journey to reclaim your mind, your focus, and your freedom.